Carmen, can you hear us? No worries, Carmen. We'll circle back with you. Feel free to also just answer the prompt on your screen, and we'll circle back with you. Stacy, are you on the line? Stacy? Okay, let's try Benton. Let's just give him a few moments to unmute yourself. Benton, are you able to unmute? Okay. Let's see, I see Claire. Claire, are you able to unmute?
Yes, I am here.
Awesome, Claire.
All right, I'm Claire Williams. I'm a community member, and I'd say I cross the bridge about 4 times a week.
Excellent. Mary, are you on the line? Mary? Okay, let's move back to Carmen and see if she is able to. Carmen, are you able to unmute yourself?
My phone is unmuted. Do you hear me?
Oh, perfect. Go ahead.
Okay. My name is Carmen Carabello. I am the president of the Esther Short Neighborhood Association downtown, and COVID has definitely impacted my bridge crossings. But I still go across maybe, well, it's always round trip. So I'd say about 4 times in a week.
Excellent. Thank you. Saeed, I saw you on the line. Are you here?
Yes, I'm Saeed Hajarizadeh. I represent the Vancouver Housing Authority, and I take anywhere from 5 to 10 trips to Portland weekly. I have family that lives there, and go for other reasons as well.
Great. Thank you. David, why don't you go next?
Hi, I'm reading the captions. There's no interpreter yet. My name is David, born and raised in Vancouver. I sit on the board for CAB for the county, and I'm representing the deaf community today. I did not typically go to Portland since COVID. Before COVID, I go all the time. I'd use the MAX train, the buses. Now I think since COVID, I've only been there 3 times since 2020.
What a change. Thank you. Elizabeth, I see you're on the line. Are you able to unmute yourself and go next?
Elizabeth Harris, and I'm a resident of Vancouver, close to Pearson Airport, and I have my airplane hangared there. Otherwise, I go to Portland maybe 4 to 6 times a week.
Great. Marjorie, why don't you go next? Marjorie, can you hear us?
Yes, there we go.
Excellent.
Marjorie Liddell, Chair of the Vancouver Planning Commission, twice a week.
Great. Thank you. Mitchie, I see you on the line.
Hi, I'm Michi Slick. I'm with Killian Pacific, and I cross the bridge 2 to 4 round trip, or I'm sorry, 2 to 4 one-way trips each week. It was definitely more before COVID.
For sure. Sunrise, why don't you go next?
So I'm here, Sunrise O'Mahony, she, her pronouns, and I am representing LULAC, and then I also live in the downtown area. And I would say on average, it'd probably be 2 round trip a week.
Awesome. Okay, I think I see Tamara. Tamara, you're here. Hi.
Hi there. Hi, everybody. Fortunately, I am happy to say that my life has pretty much stayed normal. I work in downtown Vancouver, I live 3 miles away on the Washington side. I rarely went to Portland anyway, and my life didn't change that much through COVID. I'm with Capacity Commercial Group, and I'm also your acting co-chair of the Vancouver Chamber of Commerce.
Excellent. Thank you, Tamara. I see Whitney is on the line. Whitney, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, good evening. I'm Whitney Mosbach. I am the General Counsel Secretary for the Cowlitz Indian Tribe. And I also am here, I'm a member of the Community Advisory Group. I probably drive over the bridge maybe once or twice a month. I have two little kids, so I don't drive down there as often as I did before. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Let me see. Do I have any other community working group member that's also a representative of the Community Advisory Group, either Michelle or Whitney? Let's see. I don't think I see you on the line, but just in case I don't see you, please feel free to unmute yourself. Okay. Let's see. Is Christine on the line? Okay, I think I capture almost everyone, but please, if you are a community working group member and I did not catch your name, please, this is the time, unmute yourself and introduce yourself to the group. Okay, great. Andrew, do you want to share the results of the survey? From what I heard, it ranges from 2 up to 10 trips across the bridge, but I want to see if I capture that right.
Let's see. Here, I will share my screen and show the results. Here are the results.
Ooh, Andrew, we cannot see the results, but do you want to just say them?
I'll read them off. Yes, so it looks like, so 15 people, members of this group, just cross a few times a week, between 0 and 4 trips. 3 members of this group travel between 5 and 9 times a week, and 1 member of this group between 10 and 15 times.
Wow. Okay. So I think the 10 to 15 times is definitely the winner of the night. But thank you so much, Andrew. And Kayla, do you want to share the slides one more time? And we'll get this going. Thank you so much again for being here tonight. What you see on the screen right now is this is the framework that we walked through both during the orientation and the last meeting. This is the framework for the community working groups, which, as you know, are active transportation, Hayden Island Marine Drive, multimodal commuter, and of course, ours, which is the Downtown Vancouver Community Working Group, the largest community working group of all 4. We have 3 community advisory group CAG members as part of the Downtown Vancouver Community Working Group. And as you saw, one of them is joining us here tonight. And then the other 2 were not able to join, but we do have 3 representatives from the CAG here in the Downtown Vancouver Community Working Group. Now, reminder that this is our second and last meeting for 2021. As we noted previously, the feedback from this group is important, and we may convene on an as needed basis as the program continues to move forward. Next slide, please, Kayla. The role of the community working group is to provide feedback on specific transportation issues for the program's consideration. The Downtown Vancouver Community Working Group specifically provides feedback on the interstate bridge user experience from a commuter perspective, including access to public transit and other modes of transportation, such as driving, biking, and rolling. Now, community engagement is critical throughout this entire process, and community feedback, including what we hear today from you is represented or is presented to advisory groups, program partners, and legislators. Again, I want to underscore that we don't expect you to be design experts. We are interested in your personal experience and insights. Now, let's dig into the real meat of this session. I am going to turn the virtual mic over to Brad Phillips, who will walk us through preliminary design options. Brad, the stage is yours.
Thanks, Monica. Good evening. I'm Brad Phillips. I am the IBR program Civil and Highway Technical Lead. So now through the end of 2021, we're continuing our development of the preliminary design concepts that address changes that have occurred since the previous planning effort. In our changes, we're embedding equity and climate considerations into those design concepts. We're going to be doing a screening process as we've looked, have various options and applying that screening to help us choose which options rise towards the top. And a big part of that is engaging with our community, including this working group and many others, with this preliminary information and incorporating that into any decision-making and edits and updates to any of our design options based on the comments we received. In early 2022, we'll collaborate with our agency partners and stakeholders to develop and reach consensus on what the IBR multimodal design solution looks like. There have been a few changes in the program area since the previous planning efforts. A lot of work was done before, but these changes do necessitate going back in and looking at how we can address those changes and make the project better for today. Some of those are regulatory and policy context. Some are just community priorities that have changed. There's a list that you can read. Some of the bigger ones are the expanded transit service that CTRAN has completed, one Vine BRT with 2 more on the way. We would expect 3 to be available in the future, plus operation of bus on shoulder on the Vancouver side and I-5. There's going to be changes to the Army Corps of Engineers and Coast Guard and FAA requirements. One of those being review of the navigation channel in the Columbia, and quite a few other policy changes. Next slide. So the program, in collaboration with our agency partners, developed some high-level design options that respond to these changes and incorporate the regional values and priorities into our solution. We've been looking at these in a variety of different areas just to break them down into smaller pieces. The bridge crossing over the Columbia, the downtown Vancouver area, Vancouver interchanges, which is approximately Mill Plain up to SR 500, the Portland side of the project at Hayden Island and Marine Drive. And then we're looking at the transit solution across the corridor and the bike and pedestrian improvement across the corridor. Where next slide. So last month we had this meeting, and what we heard from you are these major biggest bullets. There's inadequate safety environment for pedestrians and cyclists across the bridge. Existing heavy traffic and frequent backups. Lack of convenient and reliable access to transit. And kind of a sub-bullet of the heavy traffic is northbound I-5 car travel leaving downtown takes too much time. One other concern we heard is lack of parking in downtown in the waterfront area. And while that is a concern, it is outside the scope of this program, but we are working closely with all of our agencies and City of Vancouver, and we'll bring that concern to them but is not something that we would address as part of this project for general parking. Next slide. So we're looking at a variety of options, mostly that are looking at differences for constructability and bridge footprint. All of these options will provide a transit guideway across the river and a multi-use path. These graphics that I'm going to show you mostly are looking at the constructability and alignment issues, but the transit and path are common to all of them. So on the left, option 1 is what was studied in 2013 and the previous planning studies. It was a curved alignment across the bridge, which allowed for connecting into the I-5 corridor on both sides while allowing the existing or the proposed bridge over the Columbia to be built to the west of the existing structure. The cross section on the bottom shows what it looked like if you were to take a slice out of it. So the left side is the western bridge. This represents 2 different bridges, one on the west and one on the east. On the top of the west bridge would be the southbound lanes. On the bottom was high capacity transit. And on the eastern bridge, the northbound direction of travel is on the top and the multi-use path is on the bottom. It was suggested during those times, back in the previous planning, that a curved bridge is very difficult to construct. Every structural member is different because of those curves, and that constructability would be much easier if it were straight. And so we are looking at option 2, which is a straight alignment. The cross section is the same as what was previously studied. As a third variant, option 3 on the right is what we call a stacked alignment. And our reference of stacked in this configuration is southbound vehicle lanes on top of northbound vehicle lanes. In this configuration, it would be a one bridge solution. The one bridge would simplify construction in the water, especially, and minimize the footprints for where the alignment connects on land on either side of the Columbia. High capacity transit and the multi-use path are shown to be on the lower level, one on the east side, one on the west side. Although we have variations of this with slightly different configurations, but in all cases, this bridge would include all 3 modes of vehicles, high capacity transit, and the multi-use path. Next slide. When the alignment touches down in Vancouver, we're looking at 2 different alignments. The option 1 is associated with either the straight or the curved alignment that I showed on the previous slide. And that configuration includes all of the ramp connections that are existing today. So from SR14 can go east or north or south on I-5 or into downtown. And from downtown, you can access to south I-5, whether that's northbound or southbound direction from the Columbia River into downtown Vancouver. The stacked option, which is shown here as option 2, the structural solution for a one bridge design is much more stringent in the flexibility of what we can do over the river. And it may limit the number of ramps that we can incorporate in that downtown Vancouver section. So you'll notice the graphic picture is a little bit different. It's hard to explain exactly what each one of those lines represent, but all of the ramps from SR14 are represented in this. So you can still go from SR 14 to either direction of I-5 or to downtown. The ramps that are missing are the downtown Vancouver to the Columbia Bridge. So in this version of option 2, you would not be able to go from Portland directly into downtown. To make that move, a vehicle would continue northbound on I-5 to Mill Plain and come down through the grid back to downtown and the waterfront, and vice versa if they're going the other direction. Or you could choose to go out eastbound on SR 14, turn around at that next interchange and come back and feed directly into downtown. One of our next steps for studying these alternatives would be to understand more of the traffic implications of what that means for the out of direction travel. In all cases, sorry, not quite ready yet. In all cases, both of these options would include transit. It's not shown in these graphics. That's coming up later in our presentation. And they both include a shared use path. And the option 1 on the left shows the shared use path. It's kind of in a lightish green color. It is on the east side of the bridge and comes down in a circular ramp right next to the waterfront. And our goal for that connection is to connect to the Renaissance Trail along the waterfront, as well as to Columbia Street, which is the north-south active transportation corridor through the city. And in all cases, in all of our bridge studies, we would make that connection. It may be in a slightly different location of how it connects from the river for the bridge crossing down to land along the waterfront. Next slide. The Vancouver interchanges represents the I-5 corridor from Mill Plain or Evergreen up to SR 500. In this area, there's very closely spaced interchanges, which creates conflicts as vehicles are trying to get on and off I-5 and merging in with the through traffic. And so the project will utilize things like braided ramps, which is where an on-ramp may go over the top of an off-ramp. So that would be called braiding. It will include some auxiliary lanes, which are lanes that are separated from mainline traffic and allow vehicles to come on and off the freeway through an auxiliary lane separated from mainline traffic. So it's more free flow on mainline. Each of the magenta colored lines going up and down on this page represent all of the bridge crossings over the I-5 corridor. And in all cases, because of the widening of I-5, each of those bridges would be reconstructed. And when we do that reconstruction, we'll improve all of the bike and pedestrian roadway connections on top of I-5 or crossing I-5 to support the east-west travel across the corridor. There's some additional work that we will get into in further detail to really dive into details about the Mill Plain and Fourth Plain interchanges. It's a bit more complicated with those because of all the ramps, the bike and pedestrian connections and traffic flow. And there'll be quite a bit more work needed to really dive into the details of those interchanges and make sure all of the functions are designed well to accommodate the needs. Next slide. Just want to touch on briefly what's going on the Oregon side. We're looking at 3 different options And in this case, North Portland Harbor is what is approximately in the middle of each of those graphics. It is the portion of the Columbia that separates mainland Portland from Hayden Island. And this project will be replacing the I-5 North Portland Harbor Bridge. And that is a different assumption than what was assumed in the previous studies. So we're looking at 3 different types of interchanges across or for Hayden Island: a full interchange, a partial interchange, and no interchange. And when I use that terminology, I'm speaking specifically about Hayden Island. In all cases, Marine Drive would have a full interchange, which is 4 ramps, can go all directions on I-5 to Marine Drive, northbound, southbound in each direction. So 4 different ramps on Marine Drive. So for a full interchange on Hayden Island, it would also have 4 ramps, one for each direction to travel. For a partial interchange, we're looking at only 2 ramps to Hayden Island, which would be providing access from the Washington side to Hayden Island. In that case, Oregon would access Marine Drive and get to, there's a blue line on the top of the page in the middle that is an arterial bridge, and you'd cross that bridge to get onto Hayden Island. So if you're traveling northbound on I-5, you'd exit at Marine Drive, take a left, take a right onto the arterial bridge and arrive on Hayden Island. Reverse flow would be across the arterial bridge, straight through an intersection of Marine Drive and directly back onto I-5 southbound. We're also studying a no interchange option. So there would be no direct access ramps to Hayden Island. All traffic would flow through Marine Drive. And in this case, the suggestion is to have 2 different arterial bridges connecting between Marine Drive and Hayden Island. All of these connections would also have transit across the island and connecting with Expo, and they would also have the shared use path that would connect from the bridge, connections onto Hayden Island, and then onto Marine Drive and the regional trail systems on the Portland side. Next slide. So I went through that pretty quick. We wanted to provide some time for questions and clarifications from all those things I was just trying to mention.
Thank you, Brad. And just for context, this is, if you have any clarifying questions specifically about what Brad just walked us through, after this, we will break out into small groups where we'll dig in more in terms of your thoughts, reactions, and feedback. But first, just wanted to see if anybody has any high-level questions or if Brad can provide any additional clarity to anything that he just talked through. And feel free to ask your questions via the chat box as well, or if you want to raise your hand and unmute yourself, happy to take any questions at this time. Claire, I see you have your hand up.
Yes. So I'm just wondering, is the fact that the bridge is going to be 10 lanes, is that set in stone? Because that to me doesn't seem like taking environmental considerations to heart designing this bridge. It feels like that's just going to lead to just increased traffic, increased CO2 emissions, and is not going to, it's the only thing that's going to solve the traffic issues on the bridge is increasing employment in Vancouver and providing more high capacity rapid transit across the bridge. Adding more lanes is not going to relieve traffic. So I don't, is that 10 lane, is that set in stone? Was that ever on the, is that possible? Is that something that can be changed?
Yes, we are studying that. And I should have mentioned that when I showed those. Do you want to go to the bridge crossing slide? So those cross sections showing 5 lanes in each direction are a remnant from the previous planning study. It is where we're starting with our assumptions, but we are embarking on some updated modeling and discussions about the number of lanes. And we will be having those discussions and supporting that with some additional data. It's not available and ready for us to use yet and have those conversations, but it is definitely on the table for discussion.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for that question, Claire. Saeed, I see you have your hand up. Do you want to unmute yourself? And Carmen, will go to your question next.
Yeah, I've unmuted myself. My question is in the same slide, option 3. Is it correct that the pedestrian side of the bridge will be on the east side? I'm sorry, it would be on the west side. In other words, you'll be viewing the Vancouver waterfront. And is that correct? And the reason I'm asking that is I would anyway, I have some comments about that. I'm definitely don't see the reason for that. That wasn't what I had envisioned. I always thought that the pedestrian bicycle direction or placement would be looking east.
So I should have made that clarification as well. These cross sections are as if you are looking north. So the shared use path is on the east side. The high capacity transit is on the west side in these graphics.
Thank you. Perfect. I'm good.
On the stacked option, we are looking at variations to that layout, and we could be looking at a shared use path on the upper level of the west side above high capacity transit. But there was a lot of good work done from the previous planning, which did suggest that the better location for the multi-use path was on the east side, and the better location of high capacity transit is on the west side for a variety of different reasons.
Thank you. I didn't realize you were looking north, so that's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Saeed. This is a great clarifying question. And now I want to turn your attention, Brad, to a question from Carmen in the chat box. Carmen says she does not understand the Hayden Island slide. Is there another view of the area that maybe could be used?
It's all we have now. Are there specific questions that I could explain a little bit better?
Carmen, feel free to unmute yourself if you want to share anything additional. And of course, the focus of our time today is going to be focused on the downtown Vancouver side specifically, but the team did want to provide this view for a more holistic view. So Carmen, we can always reach out or speak with you one-on-one as well, but feel free to jump in if you have any additional clarification, Carmen. Okay. I also see Mitchie. I see that you have your hand up. Oh, go ahead, Carmen.
This is Katie. I would also just add that we right now have an online open house and an interactive survey that features these preliminary design options, including the Hayden Island Marine Drive. And so for those of you that are interested in some of these that we're not going to get into as much detail around tonight, that will be a tremendous resource for you to go and visit on your own time. And at the end of this meeting, Monica will be sharing the links to those directly. And then I will also note for that specific question, we also do have a Marine Drive Hayden Island Community Working Group where you're able to tune into an upcoming meeting on December 7th where you could learn a lot more about this as well.
Thank you, Katie. Okay, Michi, the mic is yours.
Thanks, Monica. Going back to the downtown slide, I noticed that option 2 and option 3 have very, very different ramp connections into downtown. And I was curious if the team could talk a little bit more about the elevations of the bridge and the ramp and how it relates to downtown impact to the areas below the bridge and the ramps, and whether there's more or less connectivity onto the bridge with one option or the other from different parts of downtown.
Yeah, good questions and hard to explain in this level of graphic. I'll start with option 1 on the left. That option is the 2-bridge option. So the vehicular traffic is side by side with transit and Charities Path underneath it. The ramps in this configuration are all providing the same connections that are there today. So specifically to downtown, I guess we refer to this as the C Street ramps because we reconfigure where those on and off ramps go to. In that configuration, you could go from C Street to southbound I-5 or northbound I-5 to C Street. It also has the connections from SR14 to downtown. The elevations of the bridge itself is fairly high over the Columbia River as we're providing the navigation channel of approximately 116 feet of vertical clearance. It comes then down towards the waterfront. Currently, the I-5 goes underneath the Burlington Northern Railway, but now because we have to be so high over the Columbia, it would go over the top of it. The mainline I-5 in option 1 is the highest element of all of the ramps. All those different loop ramps and everything are below I-5. And it ties back into the existing ground about at the area of the cinemas, which is kind of on the right side of the screen, just before Evergreen, a little bit before Evergreen. The one on the right is different because of the structural considerations that I was suggesting before. So there's a ramp that is kind of a U-shaped ramp on the right side. That ramp is the eastbound SR14 to southbound I-5 ramp. And in that case, it climbs up from SR14, goes over the top of I-5, and then ramps back down as it's going south to connect into I-5. So in that version, that ramp is now the highest element of the interchange complex. The loop ramp, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I interrupted.
I was just going to say the loop ramps, neither of the loop ramps are there now because that replaces one of them. One of the loop ramps today is that connection. The other loop ramp is northbound I-5 to downtown. And that movement is not included in option 2. So in this option, you cannot make the movement from C Street to I-5 that I described in option 1.
And is there a materially more usable area underneath the interchanges in option 2? In other words, does it leave room for public parks or structures to happen underneath, or is it effectively kind of an unusable space below the interchange? Because I know the current kind of option one is kind of, I guess, closest to what we've got now. And it's definitely just kind of a quagmire of ramps happening in that area.
Right. No, that's a really good question. What these options don't show are the local street grid that is occurring underneath I-5. So Columbia connects down to the waterfront. This project also extends Main Street down to the waterfront to create a grid within this interchange complex. And the removal of the ramp next to Main Street might allow for some of that use flexibility that you're talking about. We're currently studying that. We think that might be the case. We don't know that for sure. So we are studying that right now. As we bring these into screening, we should understand a little bit better what that type of trade-off might be. So it's a good question.
Yes, thank you all. These are all very, very good questions. That is exactly why we're here. Now we're going to transition to breakout rooms where we'll have even more time to get your input, your feedback, your reactions on this content. Specifically, Kayla, if you go to the questions slide, we'll dig into bridge configuration, the interchanges, and any general feedback. So Andrew, do you want to break us out into rooms? You've been randomly assigned into a small group, and then we'll be back in about 15 minutes. Andrew, go ahead and
so
take
everyone
us.
at the bottom of your screen, you will receive a notification to join a breakout room starting now. Hi, Carmen, are you there? Carmen, can you hear me? Carmen, can you hear me?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I sure can. Did you lose connection from your breakout room?
I'm having trouble with my phone and I haven't been able to get my audio to really work. So I thought I'd try and log in the computer.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes. Did you go to your breakout room?
I did. I'm in room one. I'm technically still connected, but I was going to disconnect my phone once I got connected here,
Okay.
if possible.
So I can, I'll put you in that breakout room and then you can just have your camera on one device and audio on the other.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, are we coming all back?
Yes, it looks like people are slowly trickling back in.
Perfect. Let's just give it a couple of seconds to get everybody back on board. Let's see. Looks like we only have 6 left. Here we go. Perfect. Welcome back, everyone. I know the conversation was getting right to the end of it. Know that we will have an opportunity to debrief what we heard in each of the breakout rooms. But first, we'll hear from Ben first. But I do want to say, if you have additional commentary or questions, please use that chat box. Our team is continuously monitoring that, that box, and we'll make sure to address any questions that come through. So, but first, I am very, very pleased to invite our IDR technical lead, Ben, to talk to us about transit integration. Ben, the mic is yours.
Great, thanks, Monica. Yeah, my name is Ben Dynas, and I'm on the urban design team within the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program. Next slide. So we just want to talk about the different ways that people access transit today. Kind of 3 general categories for this are essentially as a bike or pedestrian, walk, bike, roll. So that can include people walking and biking, other potential mobility devices as well. And then the second way is by personal vehicle. So usually either someone parks at a park and ride or they get dropped off by someone. So by car usually. And then the third kind is transfer from another form of transfer. So that could be a different line of the same mode, or it could be a different mode. So maybe going from bus rapid transit to local bus, or light rail to local bus, or something like that. Next slide. So we're going to look at a series of maps that sort of show how those different ways of accessing transit, kind of illustrating those within the city of Vancouver. Just to sort of orient everybody, the main yellow line there is either existing or planned or in construction BRT, so the Vine. And then the yellow dots are local bus stops, so that represents the local bus lines. And then the green lines represent the bike facilities. And then there's also a few kind of key destinations around the city of Vancouver on there to sort of help orient you and familiarize you with where these different things are. I should also point out the 2 new connections being studied as part of the project. One is the Main Street extension that Brad mentioned earlier, and then the other is the community connector, which would be a ped bike connector across I-5. And then the black line represents the potential light rail transit alignment, or sorry, the high capacity transit alignment that are being studied as part of the project. There's 2 alignments that we'll look at. There's the downtown alignment, and there's also a freeway running alignment. So you can see the downtown alignment kind of goes up potentially Washington Street there and serves downtown Vancouver pretty well. And it, it's closer to some of the destinations you can see off to the left there, to the east. Department of Social and Health Services is one example of that. Next slide. And so this is the I-5 running alignment. It hugs the freeway and runs along the west side potentially, or could potentially be a center running alignment as well. It would serve the east side of the freeway there a little bit better. So it would still serve downtown, but it would also serve things like Fort Vancouver and destinations like that. And I should also mention that project area has a relatively high percentage of people with disabilities, low-income households, and households without a vehicle. So just reinforces the importance of high-capacity transit within this area. And then next slide, we'll go up to the north. The other thing that's different about the freeway running alignment is that it would travel further north and have a terminus somewhere around Kiggins Bowl, which is a good opportunity to connect to the planned Highway 99 BRT project. So I know there's a lot of information in these maps. Happy to answer any questions or clarify anything if that can help.
Thank you, Ben. And now, of course, encourage anybody to raise your hand if you have any questions about what Ben just walked us through. Before we get going with our next presentation, I want to give us just 3 minutes to take a quick break, but I see that David has raised his hand. David, what is your question?
Do you have any picture or graph to show us like what it is right now, and then layer on top of that what the plan changes are so that we can visually see the difference? Because I'm not really able to tell from looking at that.
Go back one more slide if you would, and I can kind of explain the changes. Basically, everything shown on the map is existing. The only exceptions to that are the new connections in blue. So there's one on Main Street just south of downtown there, and there's one across the community connector. So those connections and then the high capacity transit alignment are the two differences that are being studied. And I guess I should also say the dashed is not an existing condition right now, but they're BRT lines that are planned and could potentially be in place by the time the project is.
Ben, this is Katie. Can I just ask you to describe a little bit about what you would want their takeaway to be from what you are showing versus what Kelly is going to be showing them in a minute that is in fact the proposed transit design options. They don't need to walk away with that from what you're showing them. This is more about transit integration versus understanding the proposed design options, correct?
Right, yeah, I think it's about thinking about these different networks and the ones that you as an individual typically interface with, and how those networks connect with the potential high capacity transit alignments. And so thinking about you know, how those connections might take place relative to your daily commute or just traveling around. So like I said, I think kind of thinking about the different destinations is a really good, you know, way of orienting yourself. So if you think about to the west there, Department of Social and Health Services versus the Fort Vancouver over on the east side, I'm just thinking about the different ways that from those different places you might access high capacity transit.
Thank you, Ben. And as Katie noted, our next presentation will focus on those preliminary transit design options. I did see, Elizabeth, your hand was up. Did you have a comment or a clarifying question?
Well, thank you for listening. I've really wanted to ask either Ben, and then I see Brad on here too. Are you trying to replace or just repeat using I-5 as a bit of a neighborhood street where people come from a few blocks north and then they zip down the highway and get back into Vancouver? Or do you want to just, is this an interstate where freight and people move further distances? Or is this a convenient little, for Vancouver convenience?
I would flip the question back to you and say, what do you think it should be?
It does not work as a neighborhood connector anymore. It needs to be freight and people and go over the city or be a nice corridor, but good connections and then improve safety in the streets differently. I don't think I'm
Can I
explaining it
ask,
well.
are you talking about the north-south connections or east-west connections, one or the other specifically?
Well, right now during rush hour, north-south, that is, you can't use it. And then I bicycle around it and so try to avoid it completely. But if I do need to travel, I do need a fast, easy, convenient interstate.
That's right. And thank you for those comments, Elizabeth. No, we have to get going with the agenda. We have a lot more information to cover, and I really do want us to have time to dig into those preliminary transit design options that we're going to hear next from Kelly. But first, I do want to give us just a very, very quick break to go refill our beverages and then be back fresh and ready to go for the next presentation. So it is right now 5:51. Let's meet back here at 5:55 for the next presentation. Claire, I do see your hand is up. Please feel free to type the question into the chat box and we'll make sure to address it. We will have time to debrief at the end of the presentation, and our team can also address it in the chat box during the break. So please take a quick break. We'll see you back here in 4 minutes. Thank you. Hello, all. I know that was a very, very quick break, but I hope you all had a chance to refill your cups And please feel free to start turning your cameras back on. We got some more comments and questions in the chat box. Thank you so much. Continue to give us your comments, even if it's that you have more questions than answers at this time. That is okay. We're gonna dig in even deeper with preliminary transit design options next. So as I see all of the cameras turning back on, thank you so much. Would love to turn the mic over to IBR technical lead Kelly Betteridge, who will walk us through the next and final presentation for tonight. Kelly, thank you for being here with us. The floor is yours.
Sounds good. Thank you, Monica. It's my pleasure to be here with you guys tonight. And I have the distinct pleasure of walking you through what we have 10 transit design options. And so before we dive into those visually, I wanted to give you a little bit of background about how we got to those 10 options. Next slide, please. So this year in 2021, in the summer, we worked with transit agencies and the local planning agencies. So both Metro on the Oregon side and RTC in Clark County. And we worked together to develop 10 different transit options that are multiple modes are represented and multiple alignments. And they were really developed with the focus on how we could think about the best possible investment for this region. So once we arrived at that list of those 10 options, which we'll look at here in just a minute, we then worked with the transit agencies to do some really important work, which is understanding how each of those transit options would operate within their existing service. So in particular, a lot of work for C-Tran to understand how each of their existing buses might tie into this new investment, and just understanding what it would mean for a rider who was traversing through the region with these new investments. We then took that information and began to gather a lot of data from something that's called the regional model. And that's a really important tool that we use when we are thinking about making really large infrastructure investments. So it's a tool that helps us to understand a little bit more about what's happening in the future, because as you know, we are here tonight planning for an investment that will be in place for a very long time. So we want to make sure that we also have our lens on the future. So looking at future population and employment is just another way to think about the long-term investment. And then in addition, we worked with all of our project partners to develop essentially what ended up being 17 different measures. So we're thinking about these alignments, and then we wanted to sort of get to a shared language and understanding about how we would analyze these options. So things like ridership and impacts and those types of things. So as we look at each of these options side by side, how do they compare? So we have done all of that work, and we are in the process of getting all of those outputs put together for each of the options that you'll see here in just a moment. Next slide, please. So a quick overview of the options. So the first option is what's called a no build. And essentially what this is it is an option where the program is not built, but we do move into the future and other things do happen in the future. And we use this sort of as a measure to understand the impact of the other built projects. So it's kind of a tool. We also looked at one option, which is bus on shoulder. So thinking about some of the successful work that's already happening in Clark County and now also on the Oregon side, where buses operate on the shoulder when it's safe to do so. We also looked at 3 bus rapid transit options, 4 light rail transit options, and then one option where we both extend a dedicated BRT facility as well as an extension of the existing light rail facility with a connection on Hayden Island. So as we look through the options, which we'll sort of get on the same page on the first map to understand how to look at the options, understand that for each of the options, there's dedicated space for the high capacity transit option to travel between Expo Center and Hayden Island. And there's also a dedicated space for the high capacity option on the bridge itself. So all of those are operating in a dedicated space. And that in addition to the high capacity transit option, there continues to be express buses that operate on the shoulder of the freeway in the program area, which is to say, as many of you know, C-Tran has a very successful express bus program, and that continues to operate. What you'll see tonight is just sort of lines on a map, and it's important to know that that's intentional and that we will continue to have conversations about more of the specifics. So things like the exact siting of the terminus, where does the actual line end, where are the stations within the built environment, are there park and rides, and if there are, what size? All kinds of those more detailed discussions will occur in the future. Next slide. Great. So this first option, which we talked about a bit already, is bus on shoulder. And so what this particular option assumes is that 2 of C-Tran's express buses operate on the shoulder within the bridge influence area, which is to say that for those of you who travel on the bridge often, it was fun to listen to how often you guys do travel on the bridge. There's not currently a shoulder to operate on. And so when the program is built, there would be a facility that the buses could use when they're traversing through the bridge area. So there are 2 different routes. There's the 105X, which operates from up north at Salmon Creek. It stops at 99th, and then it makes its way to downtown Portland. And then there's a second bus, the 101, which operates between downtown Vancouver and downtown Portland. Next slide. The second option, actually, before I dive in, I'll talk a little bit about the map. And it's similar to what Ben said when we were looking at his maps, but there are darker gray lines, and those are meant to call out both the existing BRT and then the BRT for which C-Tran just received funding for, which is now under construction, which is very exciting. Yep, just a little to the south. And then a third BRT line that travels from north to south that's planned. And so all of those are there on the map to show the relationship between these options and that important service in regard to how folks would actually use this investment. The other thing to keep in mind is for the BRT and LRT, we assume that all of these options, both the bus rapid transit and light rail, are operating in their own dedicated facility for the extent that you see on the map. So here are 3 BRT options. All 3 of them terminate at the Max Yellow Line station at Expo. And the assumption is that anybody who was traveling any further south would then make a transfer, and they would take the rest of their trip then on the Max Yellow Line. So the first option that we'll talk about is the shortest, and it's delineated by the dark black line. And it's a dedicated facility that extends from the Expo Center across Hayden Island, across the river, to a end point near Turtle Place. Now, when we talk about BRT, I'll use slightly different language than I will when we talk about LRT, because for BRT, we don't really have a terminus per se. Like there's not a big facility where the dedicated option ends, because essentially the existing BRT then just goes about its trip as it does now. So it sort of would leave the dedicated facility and then continue to operate as it does now. When we talk about LRT, we'll talk about a terminus, because the light rail would need to physically end its trip, right? And then you would make a connection. So for the BRT, this particular first option ties back into service near Turtle Place. Then the second option, which is that green dotted line, is a BRT connection, again, from Expo Center to Hayden Island across the river. And then it does what we say, it hugs I-5. So essentially it travels very close to I-5 and travels all the way north to a terminus near Kiggins Bowl. And then the third option, which is delineated by the blue dots, essentially travels in the same alignment as what was identified in the previous program. So it travels again from Expo Center to Hayden Island across the river, and then it travels in a couplet in downtown Vancouver and then it makes its way to a terminus over by I-5 and McLaughlin. So very similar to the previously identified alignment. Next, we're going to look at the light rail options. And there are 4 of those, and 3 of them are very similar to what we just looked at. So for the light rail options, essentially it's an extension of the existing MAX yellow line. So each of them would sort of start there, but it would be extended. First, we'll talk about the 2013 locally preferred alternative. So that's referring to the option that was identified as preferred under the previous program. And that's the one that travels through downtown that has a couplet through downtown. So again, an extension from the Expo Center Yellow Line Max to Hayden Island across the river, traveling on a couplet through downtown, and then making its way over to a terminus near McLaughlin and I-5. Then there's another option similar to BRT, where we have an extension of light rail from Expo Center to Hayden Island, across the river to a single station with a terminus near Turtle Place. The third option and the fourth option are both those hugging I-5 options, where again, it's an extension from the Expo Center to Hayden Island across the river. One of them hugs I-5 and makes its way to a terminus near McLaughlin and I-5. And then the other option extends all the way to Kiggins Bowl. So those are the 4 light rail options. And then we have one more. This is the one that we talked about a little bit already, where we have essentially an extension for both modes. So first we'll talk about from the south to the north. We have an extension of the existing yellow line MAX, just one stop to a new terminus that would be located on Hayden Island. And then we also have a new dedicated facility that would start near Turtle Place and make its way across the river to a terminus also on Hayden Island. So folks that were wanting to travel further south from Vancouver would make their way across that dedicated facility, and then they would transfer at Hayden Island to the MAX in order to make a connection further south. All right. I think that's all of my slides. I do remember hearing lots of feedback about how these maps are maybe a little bit difficult to understand. And so let me know if there are specific things that I can dive into. Any questions that you have, of course, but I completely understand that maps can be a little bit difficult to understand. So let me know if you have questions.
Thank you, Kelly. That was quite a bit to unpack. And I know that there's probably a couple of clarifying questions. I see some on the box already. We have a few minutes before we go again and break out into rooms and dive into more questions there. But first, Sunrise just wanted an explanation about what is a couplet.
Oh, yes. Great question. And thank you so much for asking that, because I sort of live this stuff. And so I use these terms that other non-planners don't use. So thank you for asking me that question. And I apologize for using a weird word. Could we go back to the light rail slide or the BRT one? So a couplet essentially means that transit is traveling on one street when it's headed north, and it's traveling on a different street when it's headed south. So it travels on 2 different streets depending on the direction that it's traveling. And so that is what a couplet is.
So the light rail would go, that's where the light rail would go?
Right. So it would head north on, it's been a while.
One of them, Washington or C Street.
North on Washington. I think actually the other one is, it's Washington and
Broadway. It's Broadway.
Broadway.
Oh,
yeah.
I mean Broadway. Why did I say? Yeah.
Yeah.
So what would or do we talk about this later? What would I'm all for light rail, but I'm trying to visualize how that would be for traffic and any of these for removing of any businesses or homes, or not, there's not as much of an issue there, but in other ones.
Sure. And so the BRT system that's currently in place also travels on a couplet. And so I think in some ways you can kind of think of it similarly. It would be though in a dedicated facility. So a lane would be dedicated for the use of transit as opposed to having shared traffic.
So, okay, so light rail would not be wider. It would use the same size space that BRT is using currently.
It would use about a lane worth of space.
And then there'd be no parking on that side where it's at because you've got light rail instead of a bus.
That's likely true, right? Yeah. In terms of the details about the exact configuration, I know
that's later. Okay,
but you can sort of think about that. And I don't know if you've spent much time in Portland, but we have a transit couplet that travels east and west right through downtown, like along the Pioneer Square.
Yeah.
So it's sort of that same concept, just to visualize it.
Yeah, they just have more streets down there for people to take other routes.
Sure.
Thank you, Sunrise. Great questions. Claire, let me hand the mic over to you.
So it's just a quick one on the BRT options. What is the effective difference between the first and the third option? Since the third option, kind of that connection from Turtle Place up to McLaughlin, already exists. That's the BRT we have now. So how is that different from just sending the new BRT just to Turtle Place?
Good question. So the differentiation that we're trying to portray is that the BRT would operate in dedicated space. So you're absolutely correct that the existing BRT travels within that same footprint, but it does so in shared lanes. And so this is meant to say that this would be a dedicated space.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But not a big difference in terms of the actual routing itself.
Mm-hmm.
Or not a difference at all.
Thank you, Claire, for that question. And now we do have a question from Carmen in the box, and I think we'll have time also to dive into during the breakout session. But Kelly, Carmen's question is, how do these options work with the initial presentation options that Brad spoke about earlier of where the entrances and exits would be? Do you want to tackle that at a high level, and then maybe we can dig deeper in the breakout sessions?
Sure. Let's see. Great question. So of course, this is all part of a single solution that we're working towards that's multimodal. Can you read the specific question again? I want to make sure that I answer it the best way that I can.
Absolutely. How do these options work with the initial presentation options of where the entrances and exits would be?
Okay, and when you say entrances and exits, I'm going to assume that you mean where the transit moves into the dedicated facility and moves out of the dedicated facility?
I believe that is what Carmen is asking, but Carmen, feel free to jump in if you want to clarify your question.
Great.
Go ahead, Kelly.
Okay, so I think I'm gonna phone a friend and bring up Brad as well if he's up for it. So in terms of the specifics, I don't know that we have an image that gets at that, but the intention is that the transit option would come off of the bridge and make its way to grade, depending on, of course, where it was headed. And to grade means that it would be then like on the roadway network. I don't have any specific information about exactly where that transition occurs. And I don't know that Brad has anything either. The conversations that we're having in regard to sort of how that would work at Hayden Island is that there's various ways that can be addressed in terms of the height of the station and sort of how the transit interacts with the overall structure. And so I think overall what we would say is that a lot of those details are to be determined. We of course have more detailed assumptions that went into the original program. And so some of those help to inform the conversation, but I don't have really specific information about that exact tie-in.
A little bit more information. The previous presentation, I showed the cross sections of the main river crossing, where transit was underneath. And that can be either LRT or BRT underneath the vehicle lanes. The assumption is that once the bridge connects onto land, whether on Hayden Island or downtown Vancouver, then the transit would come out from under the bridge and then go in the direction that it wants to go. So like in Vancouver, this graphic is showing some options go towards Turtle Place, where it diverts away from the I-5 corridor and gets to grade. If it stays hugging I-5, it is off to the west side of I-5, mostly it was what we're looking at, and various configurations as how that corridor would continue north up I-5. But our design teams are working in close coordination with each other because, as Kelly said, this is a one project. We are designing these in coordination with each other and looking at everything all together as a design team.
Thank you both. Extremely helpful context. And that was a pretty smart question, Carmen. Thank you for sending that our way. Now, we're going to once again split into 2 breakout rooms where we will spend about the next 18 minutes together. You'll have, again, a chance to share additional thoughts, insights, and feedback. We have several prompts to get your thoughts going. And then we'll come back and we'll report out, we'll debrief on the 2 conversations that we had in the breakout room. So I know there are still some other clarifying questions that you may have. We had some extra ones in our group. So we'll have a chance to come all together and have another opportunity to ask questions and hear highlights from both conversations. So Andrew, I will let you take it away and get us to our next breakout rooms.
Thanks, Monica. Okay, everyone, I'm going to open the breakout rooms now, and you will receive a notification at the bottom of your screen to join that room. Let's see, phone number ending in 6422. Are you there?
Yes, 6422 is here.
Yes. What's your name?
I'm David Rowe.
Oh, okay. Are you calling in for a public comment?
No, I'm just listening. I'm late to the meeting. I got tied up in traffic from Portland.
Okay.
So I was just kind of listening to what the comment was at the end. Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. So how do I mute *9, is it?
Yes. Here, I can mute you.
Okay.
Hi, David. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. I was wondering, is it possible for you to join this meeting via YouTube and watch the live stream instead of being in the main Zoom room? Can you join via YouTube and watch this meeting being live streamed?
I'm not set up right now. It'd take me a few minutes. I think I'll just forget it. And so you're saying I can't listen to audio this way?
So our participants are currently in breakout rooms and
Right, I know that.
for about 15 minutes, and um, just with different restrictions, we're hoping that you can join via the YouTube live stream.
Okay. Last time I went with my computer and a Zoom meeting, it was delayed about a minute, and I couldn't make a presentation with Zoom, but I was listening to audio, and audio was real time, but the video and the audio through video was delayed over a minute. So I couldn't make a presentation because of it. So is that something that could occur?
Let's see. Are you wanting to make a public comment or just listening to?
Just listening.
So I think in that case, we would like you to join via viewing the YouTube live stream instead of being in this meeting.
Okay. Okay, I'll get set up, and if I can get in, I can get in, but I'll probably go to another meeting later. Okay?
Thank you.
Bye.
And we are slowly coming back. I see folks coming back here. Perfect. Andrew, I think we have everybody back, yes?
We're still waiting for a few people
here
to
we
come back.
go.
Oh, look, here's a big group.
There we are. Okay, great to see you all back. Look at us. We are back on track, on time for our agenda. You all are doing amazing. I am eager to hear the highlights from each of the sessions. So here's how this debrief is going to work. We'll first walk through highlights from the discussion we just had about preliminary transit design options. And then we'll spend a few minutes debriefing key takeaways from the conversation we had previous to us taking our break about preliminary design options. Jason, if I could please have you get us started. Let's hear the highlights from your group first, and then we'll hear from Kayla. Jason, the floor is all yours.
Sure, and if I am able to share my screen. So hopefully I've been able to capture our comments from breakout group number 1 on the highway design options. We had first a couple of comments very much in favor of removing the downtown Vancouver interchange. Talked a lot about the C Street interchange is very high speeds, heavily trafficked intersection, and it can be very dangerous. So was like the idea of having that removed. And there was some agreement with that, the C Street interchange and Washington Street on the on-ramp creates, and was the word that was used was bizarre interchange with the highway, and there's lots of backups there. And so, improvements downtown could eliminate those. So I see David nodding his head. So hopefully I captured those comments correctly. We did have some comments about the current maps, and the visuals that we're seeing do make it tough to provide a quality feedback. And so in the future, folks would like to see maybe a 3D model, things that could be turned on its axis, so that the on and off ramps that exist and the interchanges that are being considered can be really seen from every angle. The existing interchange from Highway 500 to I-5 is a bit confusing as it stands. However, worried about the effect that removing that would have on the St. John's Street, and sending all that traffic through St. John's could possibly have a negative impact on the neighborhood. I ran out of characters there. That's what I was going to say, on the neighborhood. Just some general feedback. Again, we had some discussion around the current maps and 2D visuals, and we did explain that as we get deeper into the program and into the true design phase of the program, that those visuals will be enhanced and more probably user-friendly. And then the idea of having multiple modes to get across the bridge in short amount of time is extremely important. Reducing the amount of vehicles idling on the bridge, and also just one comment on trucks and products and freight being able to not idle on the bridge but get across was also very important to a couple of folks.
Thank you so much, Jason. And while Kayla brings up her screen, and Kayla, let's follow in Jason's lead here and just flip it a little bit and talk about those the preliminary design options first. And I'll just echo what Jason said. That question about the fourth plane interchange did come up for us too, but Kayla, take it away.
Sorry, are you saying that you want me to talk about the transit design options or the highway design options?
The highway design options, please, just so we can follow along with Jason.
Excellent. Okay, are you able to see that okay?
Perfect.
Great. So we had a few folks echoing that they really appreciated the stacked alignment. There was a concern about how we would access downtown with that alignment. Another concern, or a proponent of the stacked option, really liked the idea of having the noise removed and not having to walk, bike, or roll next to all of the car traffic. So the option of that having a noise reduction element was really appealing. We have quite a few here. There was a comment that asking about downtown access may be a bit of a premature question without more information or more data. That was echoed more than once, that we needed to see a bit more data on this to have better capability of answering the question of which option is preferred. It feels unsafe as a person on bike or foot to be next to the speeding traffic. We heard that a few times. We simply cannot have any more backup on Mill Plain Boulevard. There's too much traffic already, and it's challenging for business and freight interests to move through town. There is a comment about saying bike and pedestrian feels exclusionary to others, especially those in a wheelchair. And it was pointed out that the program intentionally uses the phrase walk, bike, or roll to address that. Another comment said that we need to be very conscientious about creating different expanded access to downtown. And correct me if I captured this incorrectly, but I think that was meant that we do want to make sure that we have direct access into downtown Vancouver right off of the bridge. There was another comment that the design option that reduces the footprint or digging up the earth as much as possible is the preference, especially in the area surrounding the fort. We'd want to have as little interference as possible digging in the ground in that area. I think that was it. I would say that the thing that I heard most echoed was approval of the stacked alignment.
Thank you, Kayla. And absolutely, we definitely heard positive feedback on that. And I think definitely the other main key takeaway from our session was definitely that the flag about sending more traffic through Mill Plain. So that definitely came up. Now, I did hear in Jason's report out that the fourth plane piece did come up as well. We had a follow-up question after our session from one of our members, and I'll note it here in case, Brad, you want to tackle this. But we got asked for more information about the direct access to fourth plane. Sunrise is asking, so people would need to go on 500 over to St. John's and then go back to Rose Village and the area by Clark College. She is concerned about the access change to fourth plane and the areas closer to I-5. She'd like to see that image again that shows the area. So do you want to just clarify that for the group? It sounds like it came up in the first session as well.
The modification on the highway proposed would not allow vehicles to go from westbound SR 500 to southbound I-5 and be able to exit at fourth plane. There's a braided ramp proposed there because of the proximity of SR 500 and fourth plane. And so the alternative route would be for vehicles to exit SR 500 at St. John's and then travel down St. John's to get to fourth plane. And recognizing that additional traffic studies are necessary to truly understand what that change of vehicle traffic would mean to that area.
Thank you, Brad.
And another option actually is, and I should have mentioned this before as well, but SR 500, you could exit at 39th and continue west and then south, or go all the way down to Mill Plain and back up to fourth plane. So there are a variety of options that vehicles could take to get back to that area.
So Brad, really quick, so going north on 5, you'll still be able to get off at fourth plane?
You could still go from 4th Plane to SR 500 northbound.
But if you're on 5, coming from, let's just say Portland.
Yes, yeah,
You
absolutely.
can still get off and go to 4th Plane off of 5.
Absolutely, yep.
Okay, I thought it was being rerouted. You were talking about going south then. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you, Brad. Okay, Jason, let's bring you back again and let's debrief transit.
Couldn't find the mute button. So we started off with a longtime Vancouver resident who is looking very much forward to light rail. Achieving light rail is a reason for being involved with the IVR program and joining this committee. Really likes the speed and dedicated rail that it has, that more increased cars cannot reclaim the spot that a light rail would take, and likes the dedicated route. The little yellow squiggly line connects those boxes as it was an extension of the comment. Buses tend not to have a good reputation in our country, and the people could like to ride light rail and maybe not quite on the buses. A new transit system like light rail could spur some economic development in the Vancouver area. On the flip side of that, somebody said, I also a lifelong Vancouver resident, not so much looking forward to light rail, was very much a proponent of buses. Would understand the extension of the light rail to Hayden Island, Jansen Beach. Noted that inclement weather, such as snow or other types of weather, could affect light rail and stop it, whereas buses have a lot more flexibility. And buses could be, bus drivers can intervene in unsafe situations that make, whereas light rail drivers might not be able to. Noted that TriMet gets its funding through an income tax, and Washington does not have an income tax. Was curious as to how Vancouver would pay for a light rail, and a bus terminus into Hayden Island, Jansen Beach would be preferred. We did talk about living in other cities, LA, Chicago, New York, and DC. New York and DC have great subway systems that are very heavily used. I will second that. Have been on both, and they were great back when I traveled there. Concerns is how many people would ride and how frequently they would ride, and would want to put an emphasis onto increasing ridership. And then also made a reference to Seattle currently, which, in the last 7 to 10 years has added a light rail system, but kept a very robust bus system, and they can coexist and enhance each other, and has been successful. We had an echoing of the comment of increased or emphasizing ridership on a new system would be important. And appreciated the kind of countering opinions from both folks, or opinions on buses and light rail perspectives. Wanted to emphasize cycling across the bridge is difficult now, which is certainly true, and wanting to see ease of use and a new modality across the multimodal across the bridge, and connectivity to Portland and Vancouver is important. CTRAN currently has a great value proposition for the riders. TriMet does as well. Wants to see the Clark County friendly culture stay, and the affordability stay, and wants to make sure that a new system doesn't bring something new into Vancouver and Clark County that heretofore might not have been. Would be, in terms of maybe a new station, would be more comfortable with a downtown or Turtle Place train station to get across the river, versus right up a station that is against or flows with I-5. Somebody would also probably not prefer any new station further north than 4th Plane. So those are transit conversations.
Excellent. That was a great recap, Jason. Thank you. Kayla, what do we have on our side?
Yeah, let me pull it up.
Kayla pulls this up. I did hear some additional enthusiasm over the box, the chat box. Somebody said, associate myself enthusiastically with all of the positive comments regarding light rail. We heard a few of those, as Kayla will note. Ease off, on and off being efficient for all riders is more important than how many stops. Kayla, go ahead.
Sure. One of the first very enthusiastic comments I heard right out the gate was a lot of love for the BRT option. Really love the idea of a bus rapid transit going across the bridge. There was support for the combined option of BRT and LRT. A big proponent of light rail. The suggestion was we should aim to cross-pollinate our two communities on both sides of the river. There's so much to offer in both of the communities, and they're currently very far apart culturally and physically. Someone said they would mostly ride the bus, but liked both options. If there is a bus option, it's critically important for it to be a reliable and decent bus system. We heard that quite a bit. If there is not reliability in the system, then folks just won't rely on it. Folks won't trust it, and they'll just end up back in their cars. I would say that's probably the biggest theme we heard in our session was the ease of whatever transit system is in place is going to be critically important to how many folks are actually using it. The simpler, the better for commuters. If there are very few users on a transit system, it can be very discouraging as a rider, and folks may go back to using their car instead. For the question of, do you prefer a faster trip or more frequent stops? We had a few interesting answers. One said that this is a very tricky question. Commuters would want a faster trip, but from an equity perspective, it would make more sense to have the increased amount of stops as it serves more people and more widely. Another equity comment was that we really need to be sure that we're making sure that all needs are addressed. We need to approach whatever transit system is in place from a wide lens as it serves many different populations from both sides of the river. There was some love shared for the train systems in Europe, and of course the new system up in Seattle. Also some appreciation for the MAX in Portland. The New York City transit system is wonderful. The train system is great, especially for the reliable service and the connectivity across the entire region. I would say that's kind of the summary of what we heard.
Thank you, Kayla. That was great also. And I will say someone else also jumped in with some commentary after the fact, just sharing a different perspective. And this is exactly what we're here to hear. And they want to note that more stops are better for disabled riders. It isn't as efficient for those who are in a hurry, but definitely keeping inclusivity in mind. So I did want to share that perspective as well. And we're running right at the top of 7 o'clock almost with 4 minutes left. I want to say this is such valuable insight and feedback, and this is exactly the intention behind the working groups. Community feedback is crucial for the success of the IBR program, and I am pleased to see that the team has achieved the objective we set out to accomplish when we formed these groups. So thank you for making that possible. At this time, we are not planning future meetings. However, as the program planning evolves and the program continues to move forward in the coming months, we may reconvene this group. We find it incredibly valuable. The program team finds the insight incredibly valuable, and we will reach out if and when we have an update to share on that front. In the meantime, however, we want to leave you with additional opportunities for you to continue to engage with the IBR program. Out of my peripheral vision, I can see more comments coming through, and we want to hear those. Feel free to drop them in the chat box. We went through a lot of content today. We heard 3 different presentations, and we completely understand if you're still digesting some of that content. I'll talk about where you can send your comments, questions as the days go by and you continue to process this information. I do want to note, if you want to go to the next slide, Kayla, earlier this month, the program launched a design options survey to gather feedback on preferences and priorities associated with the user experience and attributes of design options. You've seen a lot of those today, but we encourage you to take the survey if you haven't done so yet. And please help us spread the word out to the community through your own channels. You can access the survey, as you can see on the screen, at interstatebridge.org/November. Next slide, please, Kayla. On that same website, the program has also launched an online open house that is live right now, where you can see an overview of potential design options, a timeline, and the process for getting to an IBR solution. Now, translations for the open house and the survey are available in 8 languages. Again, we encourage you to participate in the survey. We heard questions that spanned beyond the downtown area into Hayden Island and others. All of that information is available both at the open house and the survey. And again, bonus points if you help us amplify these opportunities with your network more broadly. We really want to get that community feedback. Now, next slide, please, Kayla. We also want to remind you of other opportunities to stay connected and engage with the program. If you do have additional questions, additional comments you want the team to hear, please send those questions and comments to the IBR team directly by emailing info@interstatebridge.org. Now, stay up to date on the latest from the program by following our social channels and signing up for the newsletter. Today's meeting recording and materials will be available at interstatebridge.org/community working groups. And of course, the program information library can also be found at interstatebridge.org/library. Now, I cannot let you go. It's 7 o'clock, but I cannot let you go without us first saying happy birthday to David. I hear today's his special day. So happy birthday, David. Everyone say happy birthday. Use your reactions.
Happy birthday, David.
Happy birthday, David. Okay, so to close this out, just a big thank you to each of you for your time today. 2.5 hours went by super fast. We appreciate you. We value your perspective, your comments, and your feedback. This is so important to inform decisions as the program continues to move forward. Special shout out to the IBR program staff, Ben, Brad, and Kelly, who presented to us and were very brave in answering a lot of our questions. Thank you so much to the team behind the scenes that make all of this possible. Have a great night and happy holidays. Thank you all.